Cultural influences. Humans are social beings with elaborate cultural rituals and behaviors that vary widely from place to place. It should come as no surprise, then, that the influence of culture, behavior, and mind is a vibrant field of study. Psychologists refer to culture as the shared beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, and customs belonging to a specific group or community. These groups and communities are generally organized around a shared characteristic or set of characteristics, such as race or ethnicity, nationality, income, sexual orientation, religious identity, or ideas such as political affiliation. In the early days of psychological research, much of the focus was on uncovering psychological universals that apply to everyone. More recently, however, psychologists have begun to consider how culture can influence behavior and mind in meaningful ways. Classically, much of the work on cultural influences in psychology focuses on development, especially how cultural differences and social interactions affect children as they grow. Generally, cultural considerations of behavior help provide functional explanations, describing why a behavior manifests differently based on a person's cultural background or specific situational demands. Feminist psychology, for example, analyzes the role that gender plays in a person's development and behaviors, appealing to cultural differences in the ways societies raise and treat men and women. Similar approaches exist for other cultural influences, including critical analyses of race, religion, military experience, and lesbian gastric sexual transgender psychology. Biological influences. Advances in biomedical science have also improved how psychologists comprehend the biological underpinnings of behavior and mind. Today we can peek at mental processes as they happen in the brain using equipment such as functional magnetic resonance imaging MRI, allowing us to view changes in blood flow to different brain regions in real time as people think. Most research into the biological influences on psychology is informative because it explicitly provides insight into process-oriented explanations concerning the biological processes linked to behavior. These biological processes range from explaining how neuron activity relates to the specific functions of different areas of the brain, to predicting what changes in brain physiology accompany various forms of mental illness, such as obsessive-compulsive disorder and schizophrenia. Often, insight into the biological origins of behavior can help clinicians and researchers treat mental illness and develop new ways to think about its origin. Cognitive influences on human behavior are primarily process-oriented explanations of mental processes, where evolutionary approaches often speak to more nativist explanations of psychology. Knowing about the influence of experience on behavior helps understand the nurture component of the human experience. Cognitive psychologists often use computer-related metaphors in their information processing models, relating the mental states and processes of the mind to analogs in computer systems. Cognitive approaches to understanding clinical behavior are also helpful. Many clinicians believe that depression is fundamentally a disorder related to maladaptive thought patterns more than anything else. If patients can be taught how to interrupt and change their negative thoughts, then depression can be alleviated. Further evidence shows that cognitive therapies, compared to antidepressants alone, a biological intervention, may result in lower relapse rates over the long term. However, combining both types of therapies is generally the most effective. Summary: psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mind rooted in philosophy and physiology. Early philosophers thought the mind and body were separate, but modern psychologists rejected this idea. The reason is understood to be what the brain does. Through empirical scientific research, psychologists gather data about human behavior and any observable action, including biological activity, to make inferences about the mind and predict future behavior. There are two types of work within psychology. Research, both basic and applied, answers psychology questions, while applied practice puts those answers to work solving problems in the real world. Clinical practice is a form of applied work. Psychological subfields are primarily defined by what they study and whether they are primary or applied, and research happens in all of them. Where knowledge comes from is one of the fundamental themes in the history of psychology, with the primary conflict between empiricism and nativism. The difference between empiricism and nativism is whether knowledge must be learned or is innate. Today, psychologists agree that both are relevant to understanding how people understand the world around them. A second fundamental theme in the history of psychology is the theory of evolution and the concept of natural selection. They have shaped how we understand the function of the brain. The third fundamental theme is the mind-body connection, which has undergone revisions multiple times as we have learned more about the brain. The history of psychology as a science is often said to begin with Wilhelm Wundt, who founded the first psychology laboratory at the University of Leipzig in Germany, initiating the formal scientific study of psychology. When a student Titchener founded the structuralist movement in psychology, seeking to break down conscious experience to its most basic elements using systematic introspection. In contrast, the conflicting functionalist movement preferred to consider psychological processes in terms of their functions. Functionalism, as well as psychology in general, was popularized in North America by William James, who is regarded as the father of American psychology. Multiple levels of explanation are often necessary when considering psychological phenomena. Ultimate explanations consider the evolutionary purpose of a phenomenon. Functional explanations consider the immediate causes, and process-oriented explanations provide mechanistic explanations, e.g., biological or psychological mechanisms. Psychologists today often take an eclectic approach to understanding behavior and mind, applying various perspectives as needed, including considering psychological phenomena evolutionarily, culturally, biologically, and cognitively.